Assalamu alaikum. Today on Nuran Academy, we discuss cultivating mercy, the future of ethical protein. If you benefit, please support by subscribing and sharing as a sadaqah.
All right, let's start with the question. A really big one. One that's going to define the world our children and grandchildren will live in. How are we going to feed 10 billion people?
And it gets tougher, because we have to answer that question while the very land we depend on to grow our food, well, it's actually shrinking year after year.
On top of that, our most precious resource, fresh water, is becoming harder and harder to come by. Now, these aren't some far-off future problems. This is our reality, right now. The planet is tired, but humanity still needs to eat. So to really get a handle on this, let's first dig into the true scale of the challenge and, the real-world limits of the systems we have in place. And here's the paradox we're living in. The very system we built to feed ourselves, I'm talking about traditional agriculture, it's straining at the seams. Think about it. It's a massive cause of deforestation. It uses up most of our fresh water, and it's a huge driver of climate change. And even with all that, billions of people are still hungry. Something's not working. But what if we could just change the whole game? Imagine for a second real meat, but grown without the vast fields, without the slaughter, and without that huge environmental price tag. Food that's literally created with biological precision. And believe me, this is not science fiction anymore.
Now, a jump in technology this big, it naturally raises some huge questions about science, about ethics, and of course, about our faith. And for us, as Muslims, the first place we always turn is to our guidance, to revelation. So when you're facing a challenge that could literally redefine something as basic as our food, where do we find our compass? As believers, where do we look for our moral and ethical direction? We turn to the words of Allah, subhanahu. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this beautiful, timeless command. It's really the foundation for how we should approach everything we consume. Ya ayyuhan nas kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiba. O mankind, eat from whatever is on the earth that is lawful, halal, and good, tayyib. You see, it's not just one condition. Our tradition gives us two critical criteria. It has to be permissible, halal, and it has to be wholesome and good, tayyib.
And from this one amazing ayah, we get these core principles. First, rahmah, which is mercy and compassion for all of God's creation. Second, we have to avoid israf, which means wastefulness. And third, we have a duty to maintain the mizan, that perfect divine balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put into the natural world. Any new technology, any innovation, it has to be measured against these principles.
Okay, so keeping that ethical framework in mind, let's actually look at the science itself. Because if we're going to weigh this thing in the balance, we need to understand exactly how it works.
The technology is called cellular agriculture. And at its core, it's pretty straightforward. It's the process of cultivating real animal meat, but growing it directly from cells instead of from a whole animal that has to be farmed and slaughtered.
So here's how it works in a nutshell. It starts with getting a tiny sample of cells from an animal, which is completely harmless. Then those cells are put into a clean, controlled environment called a cultivator, where they're fed a kind of nutrient-rich broth, and they just do what cells do naturally. They multiply, they grow, and they form real muscle tissue. What you harvest at the end is pure meat, biologically exactly the same as the meat we eat now.
And this is a really important point I want to stress. This isn't some synthetic meat substitute. What we're seeing is a massive shift where food production is moving from the farm into the laboratory. Food itself is becoming a technology.
For Muslims, this idea of using innovation and technology to help feed people, it's not new at all. Actually, we have a very deep and rich history in exactly this area. If you look back at the Islamic Golden Age, Muslim scientists and farmers completely changed agriculture. They brought in crop rotation, they engineered incredible irrigation systems, and they developed new ways to preserve food that helped feed entire civilizations. For them, feeding people wasn't just a business, it was an act of worship. Our challenge today is to pick up that legacy, to bring that same ethical drive to the incredible technologies that we have. The tools we have today are beyond anything they could have imagined. But our fundamental responsibility, our duty to be good stewards of the earth, to feed the hungry, and to make sure there's justice, that hasn't changed one bit.
And that brings us to our last and honestly most important section, because this future isn't set in stone. It needs us to get involved. This is a call to action.
We, as a global Muslim community, we have to be the ones asking the really critical questions here. Our scholars of fiqh are already debating the big one.
Is it halal? They're looking at things like, do the original cells have to come from an animal that was slaughtered according to the BIHA rules? What about the nutrient broth the cells grow in? Is it free from anything impure? Some are even discussing the principle of istihala, which is transformation, arguing the end product is basically a new creation. But beyond the fiqh, we have to ask, who's going to own this technology? Is it going to solve world hunger, or just become another way for big companies to make money?
Look, we're basically standing at a fork in the road. Down one path, without a strong ethical guide, this technology could be used for control, to monopolize our food supply. But down the other path, a path guided by our Islamic principles, guided by rahmah, it could be an incredible source of mercy, a tool to finally feed everyone and bring more justice to the world.
The answer to that question can't just be someone else. The power to shape how the world eats is a huge trust. It's an amana. So the real question is, who is going to step up and guide it? And this is a direct call to you. Yes, you, the Muslim student studying biotechnology, the Muslim entrepreneur who cares about sustainability, the engineers, the scholars. We need you. Our ummah needs scientists who really understand the details of halal inside a modern lab. We need innovators who are more focused on feeding the hungry than just making a profit. We need all of our experts to start working together on this.
So let's end with this one thought. The story of how humanity feeds itself is being rewritten right now in labs all over the world. It is absolutely vital that Muslims are not just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens. We must be in the room helping to write that story as its ethical architects. Presented and created by Nuran Studio.